Joining me now is LaTosha Brown, co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund and founder of the Southern Black Girls and Women's Consortium. Michael Steele, former RNC chair and co-host of The Weekend on MSNBC. And Noah Bookbinder, president of CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. I'm going to come to you first, Noah, at the table. And you know, I say all this to say that all of the metrics do look like, including the data, that Kamala Harris is currently winning this election, or at least she is in a good position to win the election. And yet, there is a very real threat that she could win, and Donald Trump and his people could prevent her from becoming president. And here's the evidence that he might think that, too. Here's Donald Trump many times saying, we don't need votes.
I tell my people, I don't need any votes. We got all the votes we need. I don't need votes. We don't need votes. We don't need votes. We got more votes than anybody's ever had. You don't have to vote. Don't worry about voting. The voting, we got plenty of votes. And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians.
Why would you say that if you plan to win the election through voting?
Well, look, we know that 4 years ago, Donald Trump tried to keep himself in power despite losing the election. We know that he's never disavowed what he did then. And we know now that county officials are going to try to avoid certifying the election. We've now, in the report that we just put out, we documented more than 30 of them who are in place now, who have previously failed to certify elections. These were elections in 2022, 2023, often not particularly consequential elections.
Sure.
They were doing it as a run-through before the real event, which is this fall.
Walk us through how this would work, because let's say, because these would be elections probably in Republican-leaning counties that Trump will probably win. So they say, well, I'm not certifying. Let's say an election official in Georgia says, I'm not certifying because Trump loses Georgia. And so can they stop the entire state from being certified because their county doesn't certify?
So what happens is you have a set of deadlines where counties need to certify by a certain date, then the state needs to certify by a certain date, then there's a date where the Electoral College needs to vote, and then Congress needs to vote. Once you start pushing those back, and if Fulton County in Georgia or other counties are not certifying, then it gets to usually first the Secretary of State and eventually the governor, who has a deadline to certify the state's votes, but they may not have final tallies from the counties. And that could cause a pileup of the whole system.
Yeah.
It's not entirely clear what that looks like, but
Sure.
it certainly would give an opening for Congress to do things that we may not want them doing, other than just merely counting the votes that actually went through.
Or it ends up in court, right? We end up with litigation. Let's say Georgia ends up in huge litigation, and then somehow or other, nobody gets 270 because one state can't get their votes in time. That then goes to the House of Representatives. Republicans control 26 states. Democrats control 23. They just vote 26-23 and make Trump the president. Kamala Harris could win by 12 million votes, and it wouldn't matter. Congress would just decide. And then the other option is it goes to the Supreme Court. And we all know what John Roberts will do. He and his 5 friends will make Donald Trump the president. So 6 people could make Trump president, or 26 Congress members, or 26 states.
I mean, the good news is that what these county officials are likely to try to do is clearly illegal. And every one of these states have mechanisms to stop that from happening. And actually, a lot of states like Michigan have officials who are getting out there. The Secretary of State of Michigan has sent letters to these county officials saying, you can't do this.
Yeah.
And if you do it, there will be consequences.
Sure.
The worrisome part is in a place like Georgia, where instead you have the state election board seeming to encourage this kind of activity, even though it's against the law.
Let me go to you on this, LaTosha, because you are in the work and doing the hard work of getting people out to vote. And yet your state, the state of Georgia, has put in place mechanisms for Republican state officials to mess with Fulton County, to go in and say, we don't like that Fulton County voted majority Democrat. We're going to actually decertify it, or something close to it. How much of a risk, is your organization and our other organizations that are in the voting business of getting people the right to vote, how concerned are you that a state like Georgia could do that?
We're very concerned. We've been talking about this and beating the drum continuously since the 2020 election. And we even saw it start earlier. It's just been accelerated. You know, I think that there's a strategy that Trump has for this election. It's three things. He seeks to disenfranchise, disrupt, and literally really disarm those of us that are doing work on the ground under the veil that this is legal, that even when you look at the Board of Elections in Georgia, there are 3 MAGA Republicans that sit on that elections board. And so this is a state, mind you, this is a state that he wanted to find 11,000 votes. And so we continue to see this effort to really undermine the process. The reason why he is not campaigning, I think the reason why he's not really saying that he needs votes is because when he believes that he can take it, he can take it by discrediting the process, disenfranchising people, and really just being disruptive.
And Michael Steele, we saw how that worked out in Venezuela when people literally are in the streets because they had an election literally stolen from them. And if people think that the American people, let's say Vice President Harris and Tim Walz win by a huge margin, and everyone's going to know that, and then the Republicans decide they're going to just take it anyway, we're talking about real, you know, and then, of course, Donald Trump thinks he'll just use the military to stop it. But I want to show you the other strategy that Latasha Brown talked about, their strategies. One of them also is just this, and it's pretty ugly. This is not the official Trump campaign, but this is their Trump war room. This is a post that they put up. On the left is a stock photo. Well, our great producer, Jonathan, actually looked this up using Google search images. One's a stock photo. The one on the right is an image of some migrants who are having some issues coming in through New York. They're trying to just literally terrify white voters, to be blunt, and say that somehow because Kamala Harris is who Kamala Harris is, that she is trying to open the door to hordes of, you know, this is a sort of Steve Bannon-esque strategy. So they're trying racism, but if they have to, they'll just try theft.
Well, okay, so you put a lot on the table for me to unpack real quick, because I just want to touch on what you were talking about before, because both Noah and Latasha have it so spot on, and I cannot tell you how important those two pieces of this conversation are. Folks, you have to understand what's happening. When the RNC announces we've got 100,000 volunteers, y'all got to know what's up on the street. Latasha knows what's up. She knows where the intimidation is going to come in black and brown communities in places like Georgia, Detroit, Philadelphia, right? So we already know what that playbook is going to look like. You got two pillars here, two essential pillars to what is going to happen this fall and potentially next year. The first, you have been knocking out of the park, Project 2025. That is the federal play. That shows you what America is going to look like when we take control of the federal government. The near-term project is what we're talking about right now, state and local operations around voting. And that's the play right now. It's why Trump and others are not that concerned, because they got their embeds. They have their people. No, everyone's sleeping on folks winning these little down ballot elections. Folks like Latasha weren't, because they knew what was coming. So please listen to what they tell you when they say, you got to pay attention here. Final point to your question. The fact of the matter is, just as we saw with caravans coming across the border, hey, white suburban women, you know they're going to build Section 8 housing in your neighborhood. That was 2020. Now it's showing stock photos of lily white neighborhoods. This is put it like you said, put it like it is, because that's the implication here, right? Safe, American flag on the front porch, fine brick fronts, versus the other image of what Kamala's America looks like. That is the race play that stokes that hard, angry, disaffected white base that is MAGA, that is Proud Boys, that is neo-Nazism, and gets them ready to come out in whatever form. This is one of those, you know, be mindful, folks, pay attention what's coming down the road with these at the ballot box. And so I really think these three pieces come together in a way that where everybody's excited about what's happening with Kamala, and the campaign clearly has changed, Joy, but the fundamentals, the infrastructure is what you need to focus on now, because that's where the race is going to be won or lost.